Today we start with 2 shrimp tanks. By the end of this video, you will have 1. But no, Aaron, what about the shrimps? Okay, jokes aside, today we will be making a serious change to one of my 20-gallon tanks in the back. Let me go ahead and show you real quick. Okay, so right now we have the crystal red shrimp and the cherry red shrimp, okay? What we've done so far is almost all of my cherry red shrimps are gone at this point. I've given them to friends, as you've seen in my previous video. I've also traded some of them in at a very good rate for some store credit for some future purchases. We'll see those in a bit. Anyways, the whole purpose of this video is to show you the complete rescape and setup of this 20-gallon tank. I believe it's 24 by 14 by 14. We are going to be converting it into a Dutch style aquarium. It may not be exactly Dutch style, but anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at this. What we've got so far is I have some sea chem fluorite in these 2 buckets, already prepared, ready to go, cleaned and washed, and then some sea chem black sand. What I would like to do in all reality is keep some of my existing ADA Amazonia substrate as a bottom layer. I know typically you're not supposed to do that because it's supposed to be more top layer, but I do like the soil and the buffering properties, so we're gonna go ahead and keep some of that, and I'll layer some of this substrate as we go. With this setup, we are gonna be going high tech. So with high tech, we are gonna need a few things. First of all, we've got a 5-gallon CO2 tank with regulator. This is a fantastic regulator. I'll try to leave a link in the description for all items you're seeing here below. So go ahead and take a look at that. With the CO2, we're gonna be dosing with GLA's dry fertilizers. I've already prepared the macros and micros overnight, so these things have been ready to go for quite a while. With that lighting, we're gonna be using a Phoenix Ray 2. This light produces a huge amount of PAR. I'm not entirely sure if I'm gonna stick with it. We'll go ahead and see. It's actually a light fixture that I've had for quite a while. If we wanna stick with a 24/7 method, we still can. If not, I've got a few of my old timers laying around, digital timers. I have the other kind, the manuals, but you know, these are a lot easier to program, pretty fantastic, and there's 2 different plugs on both sides, so if you want to key in your solenoid and your lights, you're good to go. The first step of converting this tank over to a different aquascape is going to be first removing your existing aquascape. I mean, that sounds really basic, but there are a few key steps that make it really important, especially if you're going to be using the same filter media or you want the tank cycled immediately afterwards. So what I'm doing right here is I am taking my sponge filter, the wood, any of the hardscape pieces you're going to want to keep. I also keep my subwasser tang on the half coconut shell because I don't know what I want to do with it yet. I absolutely love this piece, but honestly, it has no place inside of my my planned aquascape, so I may include it back into my CRS tank. Next up, you're going to want to drain all the water from your tank. There's a couple ways you can do this. You can use a basic hand pump siphon, a regular siphon. In my case, I'm really lazy, so I find genius ways to be lazy. In this case, I have a old submersible pump, which I'm hooked up to, I think it's a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch tubing, and that's going straight to a bucket, where I'm basically going to extract all the water through this method, fill up the 5-gallon, dump that. I mean, I can't be fully lazy, but the goal here is to at least leave the last bucket of tank water available to keep all of my beneficial bacteria alive. Okay, so 2 things. First, I had to switch away from the automatic pump because the water level was too low. Kind of expected it, so I'm using my glorious hand siphon pump. Thing's awesome. Mochi's here to help. Mochi, hi. Yes, you're helping. By the way, for those, while this is going, I wanted to go over a couple things. First, I also upgraded my sponge filter to a canister filter. This is the Eheim 2215. Oh, nice gurgling sound. All right, guys, you'll hear that for a little bit. With that, I will be using my, I think this is 1/2 inch lily pipe and inflow. While this was on, while I still had shrimp in here, I covered up the inflow with some sponge just to make sure that no little dudes were absorbed. So it looks like I need to do a little bit more work. The back is exposed. We still got 1 inch or so. And oh, by the way, so while uncovering a few things, apparently I had not captured all the shrimp. So now that I've got the water level down, time to go round up all these little shrimp, and that might take a while. I'll see you guys next week. Through the power of YouTube and time manipulation, I have been able to capture all the shrimp from this tank, hopefully. And I've also removed a hefty amount of substrate, which I wanted to remove a small layer. So right now we have about 1/2 inch. I'm gonna be adding to that now using some of my cables, because I definitely have too many cables. We'll go ahead and do the fluoride CCAM substrate. Let's do this. Okay, so we are done putting in the substrate. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at exactly what happened. We've got a very bottom layer, very small amount of the original aqua soil. We have a 2-inch depth of CCAM fluoride, and then a final 1/2 inch of CCAM black sand. I really like the look of that. We did a minor slope from the back to the front to give you a little bit of perspective. So at this point, what we want to do is go ahead and begin planning out the plant setup. Okay, we are back. I took some time to place these plants very carefully. Before we get into this, I really want to emphasize how disappointed I am about the state of the plants that arrived. Now, I bought these plants from boostplants.com. The guys have always been absolutely fantastic to me. This is not their problem. I completely recommend their website. They're not paying me. The problem had to do with America's USPS service. I ordered these plants on the, I believe the 9th, and now today is the 17th. I finally got them. I got these in today after that much time. So let me show you some of the issues that we're seeing first before we get into the actual plants. This is my Kabomba aquatica. There's only a few stems left. The rest had turned into complete goop. That's the best word I can describe goop. On top of that, here you can see the parrot father. This is also called Myriophyllum aquaticum. And you can see how yellow this is, how it's broken apart. These are the best pieces I could find left. I'm incredibly disappointed. I originally had a spot here and here dedicated to a few other plants, specifically a nymphi tiger lotus, as well as some Amani gracilis. But unfortunately, neither of those plants are going to make it. They were a complete mess. But let's go ahead and stop talking about the negative. Let's get into what's good. So first, let's talk about the aquacultured cups. So up front here, as you can probably guess, I'm going with dwarf baby tears, or HC Cuba, however you want to call it. So this section and this section will be HC Cuba. Along, I don't know if you can see, I put toothpicks in here to kind of give me a rough edge. Through this path and this path, I will be placing in some alternate, this is some Alternithera rosifolia. I'll be putting those along those two edges to kind of create a border between my HC carpet here and here. I have plans for this path here, but we'll have to do that later because unfortunately some of my plants died. In this subsection right here, I will be growing bonsai, Rotala bonsai. I didn't actually know that they would be this small as a aquaculture, but that's fine. We'll make do. Everything else is going to be small at this point. Okay, so over here on the left we have the Crinum calamistratum. This is a very interesting plant. I'm not entirely sure if it's too large for my 20-gallon tank. It's all wavy and cool looking, like a little snake that was made out of dying leaves, I guess is the best way to describe it, but we'll see this grow. I absolutely love this plant, very unique. Oh, in the back left we have the Bacopa minieri. I've had Bacopa in the past. I absolutely love this plant. I was actually thinking about going for a purple variant, but what I'm really trying to accomplish is going for a green, red, green off color, because this is kind of yellowish orange, even though it's all kind of dead right now. Hopefully it'll actually survive. And then red again, and we'll kind of go from there, but unfortunately I don't have that red, so there's not much that we can do. So that kind of deals with everything. Unfortunately, the whole aquascape is centered, I was hoping to center on the tiger lotus, but that died. It actually looks completely horrible, but anyways, so let's go ahead and start planting these one at a time so we can fill up this tank and get this going. Okay, so the first plant we're gonna look at is the dwarf baby tears, HC Cuba. Now this comes as a tissue culture, and as some of you who have used this in the past, it has this gelatin substance on the back. Now this is packed full of nutrients, moisture, something to keep it alive, and that's pretty much the reason why the tissue culture showed up the best that they can. Now, what I have done is I have set up a small bucket of some of the tank water that I was using, and I want to rinse this stuff off. You really don't want to have this in with your plant when you plant it. Basically what I'm doing is, if you can take a close look, I'm being very gentle. I'm just kind of rubbing it away. Don't be too quick about this process. You know, you don't want to lose anything, but just try to get off as much as possible. It's not going to kill anything if you know, lose some of it, or if you include some of the gel into your tank. So don't worry too much about it. Okay, so I know a lot of people sometimes use razor blades. I prefer to just kind of gently break it apart with my hands. So what our goal really is to get small clumps that aren't too small, but are, you know, good enough to plant. Now, something like this is maybe a little bit too big, but it actually, you know what, honestly, I think that's good. So just kind of break it apart into pieces about that size. Okay, so before we continue, I want you guys to notice a few things. I said earlier that these tissue cultured cups did the best, and while that may be true, let's go ahead and take a look at something. So this HC Cuba, or dwarf baby tears, looks very nice. Like, this stuff actually looks healthy and how it's supposed to be. However, the other cup, as you can see, so here's I want to show you. This is what the first cup looked like. It looked healthy, full. This other, it's kind of like padded or matted down, and it actually has a very distinct smell. The leaves still look green, okay? I guess that's important, but I think there might be some dead matter. So what I've done is I have cut off some of the root system on all of these. I'm not using all of it because unfortunately I think some of it's not very good. It's gonna be a little bit sparse in this area, but you know, hey, we'll go from there. So let's go ahead and put these in. Okay, planning is finished. That was a little bit quicker than I thought, but I want to go over a few things before we go ahead and continue with this process. first and foremost, I want to talk about this section here. So this Bacopa aquatica is on its last leg. I was only able to retrieve 4 stems, and even those stems don't look very good. So I'm going to be carefully watching those over the next couple days. The parrot father that I initially said I would put in here, it's so dead. It's unbelievable. I'm incredibly disappointed on the turnout of some of these plants just because of the shipping issues. Because of that, I've got this giant gaping section which I'll have to fill eventually. So the tank's not going to be done, but I mean that's kind of how it is. Again, if you look at this HC Cuba versus this HC Cuba, I mean there's like a huge difference. One of them looks like a goop, the other one does not. So we'll see how that turns out. I'll be keeping a very close eye on those. Pogastamon halferi, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. It's doing pretty well. It came in these little tissue cultured clumps, so we'll see how those grow out. I've never actually grown them before, even though I like them. So yeah, I mean the Aquascape is doing well. This entire section is going to be blank for a while, but you know, we'll see how that goes. You know, that's kind of how these things do. Life throws you a curveball, just got to take it and deal with it. So next we will be flooding this tank and then adding inside the CO2, the heater, and we'll go over all the details in that shortly. Okay guys, so the next step to this process, well actually before we jump ahead of ourselves, what have we done so far? We have unpacked the plants, we have removed and cleaned out the original substrate, we have added in the new substrate, we have added in the heater. Can't really tell, it's in the back, my tank is still pretty cloudy. We have added in old media to the canister filter. So this thing, and it's been running already for quite a while, you guys just haven't seen it yet. So hopefully we'll do a parameter check later just to kind of get everything under control. So the next steps are a little bit the fun part, I suppose. So up first, we're going to be dealing with the CO2. We're going to set up the solenoid, we're going to set up the airline tubing, we're going to do the light fixture, and then finally we will add in the remineralizing agent, which is actually Chem Equilibrium. We're going to be adding that into about 5 to 6 DKH. We'll go into those details later, but let's go ahead and get into this. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the CO2 setup. These are the items that I will be using. The first one here on the far right, this is a Greenleaf Aquarium's Inline diffuser. The way this works is that your tubing from your canister filter comes in through here, exits through here, and you'll have your CO2 tubing, the inline tubing going from here to your solenoid. So basically you're passing the CO2 directly to your water line. It's a minimalistic approach, and it definitely diffuses CO2 much better than a lot of other alternatives. Up next we have a drop checker. Drop checker allows you to basically measure the rough CO2 in your tank. They're varying color degrees from green to blue, but we can get into that later. Real quick also, this is the indicator solution. It came with my drop checker. You don't really need it. You can make it with distilled water yourself, but hey, you know what? I'll use it. Finally, we have a bubble counter. You use this to measure how many bubbles per second you're using for your CO2 setup. This is very important because this coupled with the drop checker, you can kind of dial in how much CO2 you need. So this is basically it for the main equipment. Of course, we have the CO2 tank and the solenoid, plus some special CO2 tubing. Sometimes, you know, like over here, this generic tubing that I use for my my silent pump over there, some tubing is not rated to handle the high pressure of CO2. So this is. I mean, if you feel it, it definitely feels much more sturdy and stable. This is the kind of stuff that you're gonna wanna use. To set up your solenoid, you're gonna need a few things. First, you're gonna need your tubing and the cap that attaches to the actual CO2 outlet. What you're gonna wanna do is take the cap, run it through the tubing so that you can screw it on in a little bit. You can either come at this at an angle, or you can take this and put it in some boiling water to make the tip a little bit more sparse or spruce. I didn't do that, so I'm gonna do this the hard way. Come on. There we go. Okay, that was actually really, really easy. Go ahead and run this cap down and tighten it on as best you can. You definitely do not want leaks. Leaks of CO2 are bad. They're bad, kids, okay? Okay, so I actually lied. We are going to do the inline diffuser first. The reason being is that I need to work within this tubing before we finish with the drop checker. So the way that we're gonna do this is we have right here, it's hard to see because it's clear, is my outflow lily pipe, okay? I've already disconnected everything. What we wanna do is take this diffuser and do the exact same thing that we did with the CO2 tubing. Take off these two caps on both sides, fit the tubing on the top and the bottom after we cut into this tubing here for the Inline canister filter. Fall and break. Let's grab some pair of scissors. Now these are very terrible scissors, so please just work, please. Thank you, okay. Just concerned it would break. That was my main concern. Okay, so ignore everything I just said. It's not like the CO2 at all. You leave this cap on. I just been messing this for like 20 minutes, just beating myself up. You leave this on, then you place the tubing on top of it, okay? So go in, just like this. Push it down as far as you can, and then instead of screwing it on, you're basically pulling it up. You're turning it until you get to where you're comfortable, where you create that seal. And I can't believe I just spent the last like 20 minutes trying to figure it out. And I finally pull up Google, because Google, right? Google's the best place. And they're like, you're dumb. Like literally when I typed it in, it wasn't an answer for what I was looking for. It was just some guy just saying I'm dumb. Which I deserve that. I definitely deserve that. Okay, so what we have here is on the outflow, we have the CO2 diffuser inlined. It's been set up, and I'm actually really liking the way it looks. I've already ran the water through it, so no leaks, luckily, knock on wood, right? So the CO2 setup is almost done, and I'm actually really proud of my work right here. Take a look at this. So what we have from the canister filter to the outflow is the diffuser itself. From the diffuser is a very small cut of inline tubing to my bubble counter. It is going the correct way. This little knob in the center is going up. That's where the air is going to come out of. Follow the tubing, and right there is my CO2 canister, and this is the final location. So what we need to do first, well right now, is plug it in, set it up, make sure this thing works, and then we can go from there. So check this out. CO2 has been enabled. It is on. We are seeing the inline diffusion. Look how small these bubbles are. For those of you who have used CO2 in the past, you understand the necessity of small bubbles. That's why sometimes people use atomic diffusers. So let's go ahead and check this out. So right now, as you can see, the bubble counter is going at about, let's see, about 3 bubbles per second or so. That's where I'm gonna keep it for now. Okay. I think I can say with certainty that I am at least done with this tonight. It is getting really late, but let's go ahead and take a look and see what's going on. So we have the Phoenix Ray 2 light. It is installed. Look at the light difference between that one and the Planted Plus 24/7. Now, there's a lot of particulates in the water over here, so that's reflecting, it's causing glare, which means that you're seeing more light than there actually should be. But that being said, there's a huge difference in the actual par values, which is pretty impressive to me. So a few things that we want to go over. So I currently have my CO2 set on a timer to run for 8 hours. It kicks on an hour before my lights turn on, and then I have, then I have another timer. So CO2 timer kicks on an hour before my plants. And then the other timer kicks on the lights an hour after CO2 starts and an hour after the CO2 ends. So basically you're giving CO2 to the plants before they start seeing light, and you turn off the CO2 before the lights end. So anyways guys, I am super excited with the results here. I am really disappointed in the gap, but you know, hey, USPS shipping, they're terrible, aren't they? All right guys, that is it. We finished building my new 20-gallon tank. This is supposed to be an inspiration of a Dutch style tank where most of it is plant-based. You're not gonna see hardwood, you're not gonna see rock. That's kind of the goal. It's supposed to model a English garden. If any of you are familiar with it, it's a fantastic aquascape style if you can get it right. Now I'm starting off really badly. I mean, those plants, it's really disappointing. It's really frustrating that, you know, I tried planning out everything and, you know, already getting a curveball. I'm gonna have to deal with dead plant growth, which may cause algae problems. I have to go find new plants because of the dead ones from USPS's shipping. But I'll record the entire process. I'll be there. Hopefully you'll be there with me. If you'd like to follow the progress of this 20-gallon new Aquascape, go and hit that subscribe button. I'm looking at putting out a few videos in the coming week about the progress of the tank, continuing my videos on my crystal red shrimp tank and continuing breeding them. I've got some changes in store for them, potentially new shrimp additions. Then we will get into, after this tank matures, I wanna make sure the parameters are good, of whether I've decided to make this a beta sorority or a dwarf puffer specific tank. You guys have flooded me with comments in my last video about that. If you still haven't seen it, go help me decide which one you would like to see. I am tallying up the votes. It is so close. It is so close. People are like, beta, beta, beta. People are like, oh, betas are boring, do dwarf puffers. And other people are like, what are you talking about? Dwarf puffers are like balls of cheese. No one likes balls. There are plenty of people who like balls, okay? But that's besides the point. I need to know what you guys want, how we're gonna do this, and we will stock this tank eventually. Right now, I am dealing with the plant situation. It's a disaster, but I think we can overcome it. So thank you guys very much for watching. My name is Aaron. This is Aaron's Aquatics. See you next time.